Good evening. Today's podcast is about the idea that how do students learn best and how can you find ways to have them demonstrate what they're learning so that they can show you that they are understanding the concepts. So there you go. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Alain Faber. I've been teaching science for more than 25 years. And I started the podcast a few months ago so that I can share with you my ideas, what I go through in a classroom, bring some ideas so that together we can grow as teachers, as learners, but also as leaders. So this is the plan for today. This podcast is always divided in three parts. The first part is about the learner's perspective. The second part is about the teacher's perspective. And the third segment is about the leadership perspective. And when I think about learning, teaching, and leadership, it is with respect to any aspect of life. So kids and teenagers are learners and can be teachers and leaders. Young adults, teachers. If you are working in your community, you're doing volunteering, you're part of a team, you own your own company. Regardless of your activities, there are always these three parts. We got to learn a few things. We can teach others how to do those things so we can grow. And then we can lead others the best way we can so that we can grow as a company, as a person, and as a community. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So my first segment is about learning. So when you think of students, they go to school, and or if you're a trainee, you are going to workshops, university, college, or sometimes you work for your union and you have a workshop. The whole idea here is that you are learning. Now, there's different ways of learning. So as a learner's part, if you think of a person being receiving information, then you can receive it from lectures. So if you go back tons of years ago, you can listen to a lecture, you can read a book, you can watch a video, you can always talk with other people that have more skills than you, more knowledge, and then you can learn from them. These are all possible options. I'm going to share ideas that I do in my classroom because I like to share what I do, and that might give you some ideas for your classroom, for your family, and for your teams, especially when learning needs to happen. So above all, I'm a science teacher, and I do teach French as well because French is my first language. But as a science teacher, there's a few things that I love to do. My main idea when I teach science is for students to be able to experience science so that through their experiences, they are learning concepts, and then they can talk to each other about this. So often when I have a lesson or a unit, the first thing I do is I get all the equipment for a lab, or some of the labs will do in the coming weeks, and then I let students play. I give them a chance to say, okay, these are the objects or the pieces of equipment I want you to play with. Try to see if you can reach this milestone. And usually it's just little questions. If it's a circuit in electricity, just turn on the light bulb. If you are doing chemistry, it's just working with the equipment, the eyedropper, to see if there's a change in color, if there's a pH to consider, or if you are mixing two chemicals, what do you notice? Now, this week, I've done a few labs. So the first one was about the Alka-Seltzer for the grade 9. It's easy. The whole idea was to look at the process of the scientific investigation. In order to do the process, the best thing is to give them all the list of things to do. But what I said the first day, I gave them all a piece of Alka-Seltzer, and I said, okay, just see what happens if you put it in water. It is a very, very simple experiment. But I had them discuss about what they noticed, what they observed, and from there, how they think they could come up with a lab to see how the Alka-Seltzer would behave depending on different situations, on different independent variables. Now, I could have given them the list of variables, but giving them a chance to play with it, it gave them a chance to say, okay, these are the things I noticed. Let's see if I can improve on that. Now, the other one I did was for my grade 11. Now, I'm doing an environmental science class. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of data and case studies. And I'm trying to see if I can get labs into the classroom. So this for this unit, we're looking at pollution, but pollution in the atmosphere and the water in the soil, especially when we think of the human health. Now, in a lab setting, I cannot put my students in situation where their health could be at risk. So what I decided to do was to use aquatic plants. So how can we, using an aquatic plant and changing the environment of an aquatic plant, see how we can notice how the photosynthesis works differently. So today, what we did, I gave them a test tube, a couple beakers, and some aquatic plants. And the only thing I wanted them to do was to see if they could see their plant to actually be able to produce oxygen. Now I'm going to see if I can make a quick drawing here so that you will understand. So if you look at the video, you will understand. However, if you are listening, I'll see if I can describe as much as possible. So let's see what we've got here. So if you have a plant, okay, let's see. We have CO2 going in, and then we have oxygen coming out. So let's see if I can show you this drawing here. So if you have a plant, let's say a fern, and you are looking at this one here, you could see here in blue the plant, and the plant through photosynthesis will absorb CO2 through the leaves and then will produce oxygen, which is the waste of the reaction. So what happened is that the plant is standing up, a gas is light, and therefore photosynthesis and gas exchange happens in the leaves. However, if I take the plant and I put it in water, and I put it upside down like this, and I put it in a test tube. Let's see if I can put this in a test tube like this. Like this here. I'm going to put a bit taller. Perfect. So when we put the plant in a test tube and the plant in water, a few things happen. So here I show it. So I put the plant upside down. Now we have in the water here access to carbon dioxide in the water. Now, through the photosynthesis, oxygen will be produced and it will go in the water. However, if we put the plant upside down and we cut the stem right here, what will happen is because of all the vascular system in the plant and the fact that oxygen, which is a gas, is lighter than water, it will do physically, it will tend to go and follow the vascular system, and you end up with an oxygen bubble that will form at the top. Now, I'm saying that here, and I'll see if I can produce a video this week, and I'll show it to you when I do my live this weekend. So what happens is that I give them a plant, an aquatic plant, and they had to figure out if they could see oxygen bubble produced through photosynthesis. So the first thing I gave them about 40 minutes to do so. Now, what they realized, first of all, is that first we have plants, and plants don't behave as quickly as we would like. So students were used to chemistry lab, physics labs, where you have an experiment and you can see results right away. Now we had a plant, and we put a light close by. And when they realized that the plant was not reacting as soon as the lamp was close by, so it took a little while, then the plant felt accommodated the light it had, then photosynthesis happens, and then they saw their first bubble of oxygen. Now they were excited because it's the first time that they could see, first of all, photosynthesis working, because often we see a chemical reaction of photosynthesis, but to see oxygen being produced, that's exciting. But second, they realized that the plant was not giving the same bubbles depending on the plants they had, but also depending on the groups they were in. So all of that created some uneasiness because they were questioning me with the fact that, well, all our data would be different. And that's when I said that this is the beauty of science. First of all, results are not always perfect. And second, the results here were dependent on the plant. And I said, At the end of this lab, they will know, do they prefer to work with things like an electrical engineer, a civil engineer, a mechanical engineer, or maybe working in the trades? Or do they prefer to work with living organisms like plants or like humans? And it is a differentiation that the student need to go through. And they were all excited. So we're doing the lab tomorrow. The whole idea here is to be able to find a way to gather data. Would it work? It will not be perfect. Will they get data? They surely will do. Now, the beauty of doing a lab like this is that they are, first of all, doing an experimentation in gathering data. And because they have to gather data, they need to talk about science using the vocabulary we have learned. I know that in class we're talking about human health in the environment, but we have to say that if you are able to see how a plant reacts depending on its environment, which is water, we can easily make a parallel with what is happening to humans. So if you think of the water affecting plants, you can have the salinity, you can have pH, you can have temperature, the quantity of light. And if you think of humans, we have the quality of water, the quality of air we're breathing. We also have particulate and aerosols in the atmosphere affecting us as well. So the parallel are good, and it is something that is amazing. Now, will they learn? Yes. Would they learn better than if I had done a lesson about it? Yes, they will, because questions are coming up, and then they're looking for answers. They're looking for answers within the groups, but also conversations, and that is amazing. So this is what we call, so if you look at theories, we have the old-fashioned lessons at the front of the class, which I have once in a while. And one way of looking at it is it's called project-based learning. So you bring an idea or a lab and you have students learning through experimenting with the project. I love this way of doing. There's another way that I have been using this year, or for the last 2 years actually, and it's called Modern Classroom. And the Modern Classroom is based on three things. The first one is blended instructions. Students have access to videos so they can learn concepts. Second, it's self-paced. Therefore, students go at their own rhythm to be able to learn what they have to learn. And third, it's about mastery. Mastery, so when they master a topic, they can progress to the next level. And therefore, it is for them to learn as they can, and making sure that we can promote mastery. Now, I do believe that the project-based learning is beautiful for that. One is about, it's a bit more ludic in French, which means you're watching videos and you are learning through that. Whereas we can also do hands-on and work on this. I have to say that I love both concepts. PBL is great because people can do their own ideas and their own twist to see what they have. I like Modern Classroom because it gives a chance for people to have videos to learn from and do it in their own pace. That's why this channel is on. And you will notice that I started to create more videos in English for my science classes in English, just because we have a Modern Classroom, and I love that. I have to say that if you go to training for Modern Classroom, it is a well-prescribed curriculum and a well-prescribed way of doing things. And I love the training, but I have to be honest with you, I did not pass the course. And the reason for that is that I started questioning a lot of the main curriculum, trying to see how I could take what was best from Modern Classroom and what was best from project-based learning, and what was best from my experience per se. And that's when we see that teachers are gathering a whole bunch of strategies and working with the best they can with the crowd and the people with them. Anyway, learning is amazing, and I do believe that if you do hands-on, that's the best way to learn. Now, as a teacher, and here we're going to our second segment, as a teacher, I do believe that as a teacher, I'm becoming a better teacher by learning different topics, either strategies on teaching, but also topics to bring new ideas along, but also when I apply what I learn. So here earlier in the first segment, I mentioned the fact that we're learning two different strategies and prescribed strategies, one being project-based learning, and the other one being the modern classroom. And what happened is that I learned from the two systems, and then I applied the two systems to my classroom. And I think it's working very well. And I think that in many ways I'm adapting, and therefore it's not one more than the other, but it's becoming a blend of both on top of strategies that I've been working with for the last 25 years. And what happens is, as a teacher, you need to apply what you learn to test it. Does it work? Yes or no? And if it does, you grow from it. And if it doesn't work, then you have to say, is this strategy something that you need to set aside forever? Or maybe the group of students you have at that time, maybe the trainees you're working with are not quite um, are not receptive to that strategy, in which case you take the strategy, you put it in your toolbox, and you can use it in another class or another grade or another year, which is kind of exciting that way. So here I have okay, what do I have here in my notes? So as a teacher, I know some teachers, they love to teach a similar course several times a year, and they feel very satisfied. And you know what? I have a lot of respect for them because they are becoming masters of their course, masters of what they learn. And I have a lot of respect for that because it shows that they take pride in what they do. Personally, it's a bit hard for me because if I teach always the same thing, what happens is that I want something more, and I'm trying to go a bit faster, and I don't follow necessarily the pace of my students. What works best for me is if I have a variety of courses in a given year. Having a variety of courses gives me a chance to have different perspective, and then it just takes care of many perspective I have in my brain. I think of a whole bunch of different topics at all time. So if I have different courses, it allows me to have an outlet for them. And also it allows me to be excited about learning something new so I can share that with the students, and then the students share with me what they are learning. For example, as a teacher in my environmental science class this week, we are doing tomorrow this lab with the plants. Now, in the past, I use a plant that worked very well, but it was put on a list of an invasive species here in Canada, and I noticed that it was impossible for me to find it. So I had to find a variety of other plants in the last couple nights, and then I found three different kinds. Now, are they working as well as the first one? No, but I can still get result. Now, it is exciting because it is growing my knowledge on what aquatic plants can do. Now, it was beautiful when I always had the same plants and I could predict the results we could have. Now, with the new plants here, there's two things that is happening. I told my students that I have new plants to work with. They have plants I've never worked with before, so I'm not quite sure what the results will be. And I have a group when I did a lab similar to that with heat capacity a couple of weeks ago, saying I'm not sure what the results will be because it's a new lab I'm doing. And so I knew it worked, but I did not know how a group of students would come up with the results. Same thing with the plants here. I know it works, but I'm not sure what the results will look like. So in some ways, it's unnerving for me because there's some unknown part, but it is exciting at the same time because we are doing science with the class, and the question they have, I can answer some of them, but there's some questions I can't answer, and then we have to go and do some research to find it. That makes it exciting for me. It makes it exciting for them. And I do believe that students need to do hands-on activity, because if you do not give a chance to students to do hands-on activity, how would they know that they prefer maybe to be how can I say that, like a personal care worker compared to a nurse? A nurse is much more hands-on with respect to the health, and a personal care worker, they're there to attend to someone's need. You can have the difference between a chemist or a chemical engineer or metallurgical engineer, where they are applying the concepts. I do believe that you need to do so, because in a classroom, all students are not the same. There's some people that they would love to be engineers and they need to read and learn something in depth. but you also have the mechanics that all they want to do is take their hands and just do something and then create something, explore, find new answers. And if you do a variety of activities in class, so project based learning, you give them a chance to do a project. You also have videos to help for people that just want to learn, they don't necessarily want to do the hands on, and therefore everybody can learn their way. So I was doing some of the work with the plants today, and I would say that 75% of the students I got up to do the experiment just to see how things would work. Now, about 25% of the students preferred to stay at their seats, and I went to see them and to see why they preferred to be at their seat compared to be doing the lab. And the consensus with the 25% not doing the lab is that they prefer to deal with data. All they wanted to do is they wanted to have someone to do the lab. They wanted to do the data and then analyze the data. And it's important because you have some students and some workers, some professionals, they like to go and get the information. There are other people that they love to analyze information, and therefore, there's two different groups. And it's important for students to know the difference and appreciate what they like. And therefore, it gives them some clues about what could be what's best for them in the future. So I think that's quite amazing that way. And as a teacher, is it better to use a project-based learning, which is you give a chance to give a project that is engaging about real life and also that is personally meaningful to the students? Or as a teacher, is it better to give lessons, autocratic lessons where you're at the front and tell information to the students? That's a good question. Or do you work better as a modern classroom when everything is self-paced with the students and every students have videos to go at their own pace? It all depends what you like. And by the way, I'm going to put links in the comments below at the end with a website for project-based learning and a website for modern classroom, just in case you want to explore. Now, personally, I do enjoy when people do science and they talk about science and they are finding solution and answer questions together with collaboration. Now, it is not quite just modern classroom and it's not quite just PBL, which is project-based learning. It's something in between. Is it better than others? This is what works for me. So if you have, for example, if you could share with me your favorite strategies in the classroom, I would love to hear. Put them in the comments below, and then I might learn something fun for you, something fun from you that I can apply to my classroom. And it's one of the goals for this podcast as well, to share ideas. Now, my third segment for this podcast is about leadership, and as a leader, what things can you do? So here I have some notes. As a leader, I do know that there's some leaders that they like to micromanage. So they like to outline exactly what they want and they follow the people in their teams very closely. It works for them, and if the workers in their teams love that, that's amazing. Personally, I'm more a person that is hands off a little bit and allows for experimentation. As you can see, and you've heard in the last 22 minutes or so, I do like to give opportunities for experimentation so that discovery can happen. Now, can a leader just use experimentation in their team to come up with end results? It's impossible, because as a team leader, you need to tell the team what is the overall goals, what's the end product, what's the end service. Because at the end of the day, you've got a company that needs to make money and be lucrative in one direction. However, a leader can be available and allow for, let's say, 10 or 20% an open situation where workers and people in your team can just explore new ideas that interest them, and therefore they can be excited about what they're doing. And I think that's a great way for people in the team, especially when they collaborate, to come up with new ideas to improve either service or a product. So that's something that is quite good that way. Now, I know that a few years back, I remember Google was doing that, where they were working 4 days and their fifth day was about pet projects. And it works in large companies, but in small companies as well. When if you get a chance to for people to go on job site or to work on to give them like a block of 3 hours where they're not disturbed and they can think about the project, great things can happen. That's my perspective. And tell me if you like this idea. If you don't, that's okay. Tell me too. I'm here to learn from you. And as a leader, if you're the leader of your family, that's the same thing. Some people love micromanaging their family members. Other people, it's a bit hand off a little bit and allow for people to experiment, to have great successes, sometimes have failures, but have a chance to learn from that as well. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are part of your community and you're doing volunteering and you are a leader, some volunteering, you need to show them what needs to be done to be careful. For example, some of the students at my school are volunteering at the hospital. Now, they cannot be in the operating room because they're not trained, but they can certainly be there at the reception to welcome guests. They can certainly help patients if they need something. They need to go for a walk, so sometimes they are a patient can go and they can be part of the story. I know that there's a grand piano at the hospital close to here, and students sometimes they go and they play on the grand piano. It does two things. Some of the patients that are in the hospital for a long time, they love piano. They don't have a chance to hear that. And then the students that go and play, they have a chance to play on the grand piano and practice for either their class or what they're learning. So at the end, everybody wins. So it all depends on how things go. So, and I think that's the key points on this one. And this will be the information I have for you today. So the key question and key comment for this podcast is about how do people learn best? And I've shared with you that what I like is about experimentation. And the more you experiment, the more you have a chance to chat and talk about how to make things better. And yeah, and I think that will be what I have for you today. On this, if you enjoyed this podcast, put a comment below saying, hey, this is what I like the most. If you have a strategy that you use in class and works well for you, please tell me, because I'm always willing to see what's out there. And as one person, it's hard to know the new ideas, but through you, I can learn a lot. And on this, don't hesitate to go and see the other podcasts on this playlist. See, lots to learn, lots of fun conversation. There you go. And I will see you next Wednesday at 7:30. On this, have a wonderful afternoon, good evening, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.